You hear about a police officer getting fired for misconduct, and you probably think, okay, case closed, right? Well, it turns out that's often just the beginning of the story. Today, we're going to pull back the curtain on the complex systems. We're talking special legal rights, secretive deals that can shield law enforcement from accountability, and believe it or not, put fired officers right back on the street. So, to really get our heads around how this all happens, let's look at a real-world case. This one frames the issue perfectly. It's the story of a Seattle police officer named Adley Shepard. So here's what happened. Officer Shepard punched a woman who was handcuffed in his patrol car. Punched her with enough force to fracture her eye socket. The Seattle police chief was not having it. She was firm, saw a clear pattern of bad judgment, and fired him. Her conclusion was pretty blunt, saying she just couldn't risk giving him further opportunity to serve.
But that wasn't the end of it. Not even close. Even with the chief's decision, and with video evidence of the whole thing, Officer Shepard appealed. An arbitrator, who's basically a neutral third party, came in and completely overturned the firing. They knocked the punishment down to just a 15-day suspension and ordered the city to give him his job back, with back pay.
Yeah, that outcome is pretty jarring, right? It just makes you ask, how is that even possible? And the thing is, the answer isn't some single, simple loophole. It's actually a whole series of overlapping systems and special protections. So let's break them down layer by layer. All right, so the first layer, this one often kicks in before an officer is even formally disciplined. It's a set of laws that gives police some pretty unique protections. Protections that, frankly, you and I just don't get if we're being investigated. These are commonly known as a Law Enforcement Officer Bill of Rights, or LEOBOR for short. And this isn't some fringe thing. At least 24 states have passed some version of these laws. They basically create a totally separate set of rules for how you investigate a police officer. And these protections get incredibly specific. A LEO board can dictate exactly who is allowed to investigate an officer. And surprise, it often has to be another officer. They can also mandate cooling off periods before an interrogation can even start. They can limit how long the questioning goes on. And they can even put a statute of limitations on old misconduct. Sorry, that happened too long ago to look into. So what you have here is this really clear divide. If you or I were involved in something, we could be questioned immediately. But an officer protected by a LEOBOR, they're often given time, they get a heads up, and they get representation right away. It's a completely different investigative track. And critics say, look, this makes it way harder to actually get to the truth of what happened. Okay, let's move on to the next layer, because this is where it really starts to build. Let's say an investigation does lead to a firing, just like in Officer Shepard's case. Well, that decision can be challenged, and this is where something called arbitration comes into play. And check out this number because it is staggering. A big study from Vanderbilt University looked at hundreds of these disciplinary appeals. What they found was that arbitrators either reduced or completely overturned an officer's discipline in, get this, 52% of the cases. That's more than half the time. The original punishment just didn't. And it gets even crazier when you look at just the most severe cases. We're talking actual firings. The reversal rate is still incredibly high. That same study found that in nearly half, 46% to be exact, of all cases where a cop was fired for misconduct and then appealed it, an arbitrator ordered the department to rehire them. So you have to wonder, why? Why are these punishments getting overturned so often? Well, the number one reason, and this is in 45% of cases, isn't because the officer was found innocent. Nope. It's because the arbitrator just felt the punishment was too severe for the crime. Or maybe that it wasn't fair compared to how other officers were punished for similar stuff in the past. But what about all the misconduct that doesn't even make it to an appeal? That brings us to this hidden, kind of sneaky third layer of the system. We're talking about secret deals that can literally wipe an officer's record clean. It lets them just quietly move to another town and get a brand new badge. So a really groundbreaking investigation, done by 2 graduate reporters actually, uncovered this widespread practice of what they call clean record agreements. Here's how it works. An officer is facing being fired for something serious, say sexual assault. They agree to just resign instead. In an exchange, the department basically purges all the damaging info from their personnel file. Gone. And this simple 4-step process creates what some people call the wandering officer phenomenon. Think about it. The officer gets to avoid having a firing on their record. The department gets to avoid a long, expensive legal fight. And the public? Well, they're they're often left completely in the dark. That officer is now totally free to go apply to another police department, and that new department might have no idea about their real history.
And this pattern of avoiding harsh consequences, it even extends into the actual criminal justice system. A big investigation by ProPublica in New Jersey found that when officers were charged with official misconduct, more than 2/3 of them managed to avoid any jail time. How? Often through plea deals where the main condition was just that they resign from the force.
And the consequences of these hidden or clean records are, well, they're pretty stark. Another investigation, this one from the Anchorage Daily News and ProPublica, found that at least 14 small cities in Alaska had hired cops whose own criminal records, we're talking for things like domestic violence, should have legally disqualified them from ever wearing a badge again. Period. So when you start stacking all these layers on top of each other, you've got the special rights that make investigations tricky, you've got the super high rate of firings being overturned on appeal, and then you have these secret deals that just hide misconduct altogether, it creates this huge, profound challenge to accountability. And this really gets to the central conflict at the heart of this whole issue. On one side, you have police unions arguing that these protections are absolutely vital for due process, to protect good officers from unfair or politically motivated punishments. But on the other side, you have critics, and that includes a lot of police chiefs, who say these systems make it nearly impossible to get rid of problem officers. And that, they argue, damages the whole department and completely breaks public trust. And that really leaves us with a fundamental question, doesn't it? We've walked through all these layers of protection, the special rights, the whole appeals process, the secret deals. Just understanding that they exist is the crucial first step. But it forces all of us to ask a much bigger question. How do you build a system that actually ensures due process for officers, while also making sure that the public can trust, really trust, that the people wearing the badge are being held to the absolute highest standard?